It all started with a decision I never thought I'd have to make. No, it wasn't the choice to confront my wife or to trust her again. It wasn't about what happened to our marriage. No, this was about a single moment, a choice, and a feeling I couldn't shake off. And trust me, I wish I had made a different decision that night. We were in a slump, Claire and I, but I didn't know how bad it was until I found out. It's a strange thing to say, but our lives had felt like they were just passing by for a while. You don't notice it at first. There's no sudden drop, no dramatic scene. It's all these little things, the missed dinners, the empty conversations. You look at your partner one day, and you realize that the person standing in front of you doesn't feel like the person you married anymore. And it's terrifying, because you don't know where it went wrong. I was the kind of guy who didn't ask too many questions. I kept to myself, worked long hours, spent my evenings reading or watching documentaries. But every so often I'd catch Claire in a strange mood, distant, quiet, her mind clearly elsewhere. And I couldn't ignore the weight that was building between us. But that night, that was different. It wasn't just a moment of tension or uncertainty. It was a breaking point. We had a fight earlier that evening. It wasn't anything huge, just another misunderstanding that spiraled out of control. I had snapped at her for something trivial, and she had retaliated, her voice sharper than usual. But even as the words were exchanged, there was something about her tone that sent an unfamiliar chill down my spine. Something wasn't right, but I couldn't pinpoint it. She didn't stay for dinner. She grabbed her coat, made some excuse about needing some space, and left the house. I wasn't expecting her to go to a party or a gathering. That wasn't Claire. But what she did next, what she chose to do, was a decision I could never have predicted. Around 10 p.m., after I had sat in the silence for a while, I received a text from Claire. "Going to a friend's place tonight. I'll be back later. Don't wait up." It wasn't the text itself that unsettled me. It was the fact that there was no context, no details, just a cryptic friend's place. I didn't know why, but something about that felt off. My mind started working in overdrive. Was it an old friend? Was she out with someone I didn't know? Why didn't she say more? I didn't want to sound paranoid, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was happening that I didn't understand. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how little I actually knew about Claire's life outside of our home. There were a lot of things I never questioned, but suddenly everything felt fragile. I tried to push the thoughts away. "It's fine," I told myself. "She's just out with some friends." But deep down, a knot tightened in my chest. I texted back, something simple. "Okay, be careful." Her response came quickly, almost too quickly. "Don't worry, Tom. Everything's fine." But I couldn't help it. The doubts kept creeping in. By midnight, I found myself staring at my phone, waiting for a message, any sign of Claire. But the minutes passed, and there was nothing. I started thinking about all the times I had trusted her implicitly, never once second-guessing her actions. But now, with each passing second, I couldn't ignore the unease growing inside of me. Something didn't feel right. I paced around the living room, trying to shake off the feeling of discomfort, but it only seemed to get worse. I tried calling her once, then twice, but no answer. I was already reaching the point of absurdity, questioning everything, until I heard the sound of an incoming text. It was Claire again. This time, it was a little more cryptic. "Hey, I'm staying here for the night. It's too late to head home, and I really don't want to drive." My mind raced. Stay where? I had no idea where here was. She hadn't mentioned anything about a location before. The frustration began to boil inside of me. I knew I shouldn't, but I asked, "Where are you exactly?" The response didn't make things better. "It's fine, Tom. Just trust me. I'll be back tomorrow." That was it. That last message left me in a state of confusion, and an overwhelming sense of dread settled in. I needed to know where she was, what was going on. My body was shaking with anxiety, and every second felt like it dragged on for an eternity. It was then that I made the decision. I wasn't going to sit here, letting my thoughts consume me. I had to find out the truth, no matter what. It was reckless, it was impulsive, but I wasn't going to just wait in the dark. I couldn't. I threw on my jacket and grabbed the keys to my car. I had no destination in mind, only one thought. I had to find her. I drove through the quiet streets, my mind racing. Was I overreacting? Was I being paranoid? But with every turn, the questions grew louder. Why wasn't she coming home? Why was she staying out so late? Who was she with? My grip on the steering wheel tightened as I tried to push back the rising panic. As I approached the area where she had said she was, I could see a house in the distance, lights glowing in the windows. My heart skipped a beat. Was this where she had gone? Was she inside? I parked across the street and sat for a moment, taking a breath. My thoughts were scattered, unsure of what to do next. But then I saw something. A silhouette in the window, just a flash of movement. It was her, Claire. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. I got out of the car, walked up to the front door, and rang the bell. The sound of the doorbell was like an echo in the pit of my stomach. Each ring amplified the tension inside me. My pulse was racing, my thoughts spinning. What was I even doing here? I'd told myself I wasn't the kind of person who acted on impulse, who let his doubts get the best of him. But here I was, standing in front of a house I didn't recognize, doing something that could change everything. The lights in the house flickered briefly, and I could see the shadow of someone moving behind the curtains. My breath caught in my throat, and I realized just how ridiculous this all was. Maybe Claire was just staying with a friend. Maybe she was fine, and I was the one blowing things out of proportion. But deep down, something told me that wasn't the case. This wasn't the Claire I knew. The door opened slowly, and there she was, Claire. Standing in front of me, her hair tousled, a look of shock on her face. For a split second, I couldn't read her expression. Was she angry, surprised, guilty? The uncertainty on her face only added to the chaos in my head. "What are you doing here, Tom?" Her voice was softer than usual, almost cautious, as if she were trying to assess how much I knew or suspected. But I didn't give her the chance to explain herself. "Don't lie to me, Claire," I said, my voice a little more strained than I intended. "What's really going on? You said you were just staying with a friend, but I don't believe you." Her eyes widened in confusion, and she opened the door just a little wider. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice now carrying a hint of defensiveness. "I told you I was going to be with some friends tonight. What's the big deal?" I looked around, scanning the house, but it felt wrong. There was a vibe in the air, like something was out of place. The decor was unfamiliar. The layout of the room didn't match anything Claire had ever described to me. It wasn't just the house that felt off. It was her. She wasn't acting like herself. The calm, collected woman I knew had vanished, replaced by someone who seemed caught off guard and unwilling to share the full story. "You didn't tell me you were staying here," I said, keeping my tone as controlled as possible. "You didn't mention anything about this place." Claire shifted nervously on her feet. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but paused, glancing around the room as though searching for the right words. "I didn't think it was important," she finally said, her voice almost a whisper. "It's not what you think, Tom. I didn't want to upset you." I was standing there, trying to make sense of it all, and I couldn't understand why she wasn't being upfront. Why did she feel the need to hide things from me? Why was this so difficult for her? "I'm not stupid, Claire," I shot back. "You've been acting strange for weeks. The way you've been pulling away, the secrecy, and now this. I just want to know the truth. I deserve that much." Her face flushed, and she took a step back, looking down at her feet. I could see her struggling with something. Whether it was guilt or embarrassment, I didn't know. It was clear she wasn't prepared for this confrontation. "Tom, please, you don't understand," she began, but before she could finish her sentence, a voice interrupted us from inside the house. "Is everything okay out here?" The voice was male, calm, almost too calm. I froze. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. That wasn't the voice of a friend. That was the voice of someone who was far too comfortable in this situation. Claire's face drained of color, and she quickly turned to the source of the voice. "I'll be right back," she muttered to me, and before I could react, she stepped inside, closing the door halfway behind her. I stood there, frozen, trying to make sense of what was happening. I didn't know what to do next. I felt like I was in the middle of a nightmare, every part of me screaming to just leave, to let it go. But I couldn't. I wasn't going to walk away until I knew what was really going on. I needed answers. I stepped closer to the door, trying to listen, but the voices inside were too muffled. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but I could hear footsteps moving through the house. My thoughts were racing. Was Claire hiding something from me, or was there something I was missing? The door opened again, but this time, it wasn't Claire who stepped out. It was a man, a tall guy in his mid-30s with dark hair and a confident stride. He glanced at me briefly before turning his gaze back to Claire, who had just come out from the hallway. I stood there, staring at him, trying to place his face. I didn't recognize him. Claire had never mentioned a guy like this before, and now, seeing him so comfortably in her space, my heart sank. There was something in his eyes, something cold, like he knew exactly who I was but didn't care. Claire stood next to him, her arms crossed defensively, like she was trying to shield me from what was happening. She cleared her throat, her voice barely audible. "Tom, this is Jason. Jason, this is my husband, Tom." Jason gave me a curt nod, but didn't offer a handshake or any attempt at greeting. He just stood there, waiting for me to say something, but all I could do was look at Claire, my wife, standing there with a stranger in her house, at midnight, in the most uncomfortable silence I'd ever felt. "Why didn't you tell me about him?" I asked, my voice suddenly low, almost breaking. Claire looked away, avoiding my gaze. "It's complicated," she said, her words coming out slowly. "You wouldn't understand." At that moment, I felt something snap inside of me. I wasn't prepared to accept her answer. "Complicated?" I repeated, stepping closer to her. "You've been lying to me, Claire. You've been keeping things from me this whole time. And now this? Who is he, really?" She opened her mouth, but Jason spoke up before she could respond. "Look, man," Jason said with a tone I couldn't quite place. "We're just friends. You need to back off." Something inside me flared up. Anger, confusion, and a bitter sense of betrayal. The man in front of me wasn't just a friend. There was a history between him and Claire, one that had obviously been kept from me. And now, everything felt like a lie. I didn't know what to believe anymore. But one thing was clear. I needed answers, and I wasn't leaving without them. I stood there, locked in a battle of silence with the two of them. Claire avoided my gaze, and Jason, this stranger, this friend, looked at me with an air of calm superiority. I felt like an outsider in my own life, my own marriage. My thoughts were tumbling over each other, my chest tight, and a knot formed in the pit of my stomach. "Back off?" I repeated, my voice cold with disbelief. "You're telling me to back off? I don't even know who you are. I don't even know why you're here in the first place. But most importantly, I don't know why my wife is standing in front of me, in your house, at this hour, acting like everything's fine." Jason's calm demeanor didn't shift. He looked at me as if I was the one overreacting. "Tom," he said with a casual shrug, "you don't know what you're walking into. You don't know Claire the way I do." I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but instead, I felt a creeping sense of dread wash over me. It was as if the world around me had shifted. The world I had once known, the life I had once trusted, was now slipping through my fingers like sand. Claire finally spoke up, but her voice was soft, almost apologetic. "Tom, please, I'm not trying to hurt you. I never meant for you to find out this way." I looked at her, really looked at her, trying to understand. "Then why did you lie to me, Claire? Why didn't you tell me the truth? Why didn't you tell me that you were seeing him again?" She flinched, her eyes flickering with what I could only describe as guilt. But there was something more there, something darker, something I couldn't quite grasp. It was as if a part of her knew that this conversation was inevitable, that it had been building up for a long time. "Tom, it's complicated," Claire began, but her words seemed to trail off into nothingness. Her voice wavered. "You wouldn't understand." I shook my head. I couldn't let her deflect anymore. I needed the truth. "No, Claire, I don't understand." "What am I supposed to understand? That you've been seeing this guy behind my back? That you've been keeping him a secret all this time? I thought we were building a life together, Claire. I thought we trusted each other." Her silence was deafening. Jason's presence in the background was nothing but a reminder of how far everything had fallen. I had always trusted her. Always. But now, standing here in the cold of the night, with this stranger in her house, I was seeing her in a light I never thought I would. She opened her mouth, but before she could say anything more, Jason spoke again, his tone shifting from casual to something more condescending. "Look, Tom, I get it. You're upset. But there are things here that you don't get. Things that Claire doesn't want you to know. Things that don't concern you anymore. That I could feel the rage building up in me. Who the hell did this guy think he was? Who did he think he was to tell me what concerns me and what doesn't? The audacity, the complete disregard for everything I thought I knew about my wife, about our relationship. It was overwhelming. Before I could respond, Claire stepped in front of Jason, blocking my view of him. She looked at me, her face full of regret and something else, something I couldn't place. She reached for my arm, but I pulled back instinctively. "Tom, please," she said, her voice breaking. "You don't know everything. You don't know the whole story. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to lose you." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I had always believed that Claire and I had a bond that couldn't be broken. But standing here, in this strange house, with Jason lurking in the background, I felt like I had been living in a lie. "I don't know everything," I repeated, my voice growing more strained. "I don't know the whole story. Claire, you've been keeping secrets from me. I've been living in this bubble, thinking everything was fine, while you've been hiding this whatever it is with him." Jason moved closer, as if to interject, but I cut him off. "Don't say another word, Jason. I'm talking to my wife, not you." He raised his hands in mock surrender, a smirk playing at the corners of his lips. "Fine, fine, but don't say I didn't warn you." The tension between us was palpable. My mind was a swirl of confusion, frustration, and betrayal. I turned back to Claire, desperate for some kind of explanation, something that would make sense of all this madness. "Claire, what's going on? Why didn't you just tell me? Why keep all this hidden? What's been going on between you and him?" Her gaze shifted nervously. I don't know how to explain it, Tom. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I didn't want you to find out this way. I didn't want to hurt you." The way she said it, the way she seemed to stumble over her own words, made my stomach churn. It wasn't the remorse I had hoped for. It wasn't the apology I needed. It was something else. Something that didn't sit right. "I deserve the truth, Claire," I said, my voice firm, though my heart was breaking. "All of it. No more lies, no more half-truths. Just the truth." She hesitated, looking between Jason and me, as if weighing something in her mind. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "Okay," she whispered. "You want the truth? Jason and we were together before we met, and I never really stopped caring about him." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I staggered back, as if the ground had been pulled out from under me. I couldn't process what she was saying. This wasn't the woman I knew. This wasn't the woman I married. You were with him? All this time?" I asked, barely able to form the words. Claire nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I didn't want to admit it, Tom. I didn't want to hurt you, but I never let go of him completely. It's been eating away at me for months. And I'm so sorry, but I couldn't stop myself." Jason stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. I wanted to shove it away, but I couldn't move. My world had just crumbled around me. "I should have told you sooner," Claire whispered. "But I didn't want to lose you. I thought maybe I could make it work, but I was wrong. I'm so sorry, Tom. I never meant for you to find out this way." I didn't know what to say. My heart was shattered, my trust destroyed. I had always believed in us. I had always believed that we were stronger than any obstacle. But now, I was standing here, staring at the woman I thought I knew, and I didn't recognize her anymore. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew this was only the beginning of the unraveling. The weight of Claire's confession hit me like a ton of bricks. Her words were like a slow-moving tidal wave that washed over me, drowning everything I thought I understood about our life together. Jason and Claire had been together before me. That's what she said. And somehow, all these years of marriage, all the promises we made, had been tainted by a hidden truth I never saw coming. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, each thought spiraling faster than the last. I looked at Claire, standing there with tears in her eyes, but it wasn't the sympathy I needed. It wasn't the apology I had hoped for. It was just more confusion, more pain. I felt like I was falling, but there was no ground to catch me. "So that's it then?" I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. "You've been keeping this secret from me for how long? This whole time, I thought we had something real, something solid." Claire opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand to stop her. "Number. You don't get to explain this away. You don't get to make it sound like this is just some misunderstanding. You've been lying to me, Claire, for months, and I don't even know who you are anymore." She flinched, the hurt in her eyes undeniable, but it wasn't enough to break through the wall I had just built around my heart. Jason, standing next to her, looked at me with an almost smug expression, as though this entire situation was some sort of twisted game. I didn't know if it was his presence that was unsettling, or if it was the fact that Claire was still standing there with him, so close, like they had every right to be together in front of me. "I'm sorry, Tom," Claire finally said, her voice trembling, "but I never stopped loving him. I've tried, I really have, but I couldn't let go." "Not completely?" Jason stepped closer, his hand now resting on her back in a possessive, almost too intimate gesture. I could feel the anger rising within me, bubbling up like a pressure cooker on the verge of exploding. How had it come to this? How had everything I knew, everything I trusted crumbled so quickly? I was furious. I felt like I was being suffocated, unable to breathe, trapped in a nightmare I couldn't escape. "Claire," I said, each word dripping with bitterness, "I want you to be honest with me. Did you ever love me? Or was I just someone you settled for? Was I just the second choice?" I could see the struggle in her eyes. She wanted to say something, but the silence between us grew longer, heavier. Finally, she spoke, though her voice was barely audible. "I did love you, Tom. I thought I did. But the truth is, I was never fully in love with you. Not the way you deserved." Her confession was like a dagger through my chest. It wasn't just the fact that she had kept Jason a secret from me. It was that she was now telling me that the love we shared wasn't real. I had built my entire life around the idea of our love, our future together. But it was all built on a lie. Jason leaned against the doorframe, watching this all unfold with a look of indifference. It was as though he wasn't even aware of the damage his presence was causing, or maybe he just didn't care. "You had your chance, man," he said, almost as if this whole situation wasn't a big deal. "Maybe it's time you realize that some things just aren't meant to be." I wanted to lash out at him, to shout at him for every moment he'd stolen from me, for every lie Claire had kept hidden in plain sight. But I couldn't. Not anymore. The truth had come out, and as much as I hated it, I had to face it. For a moment, I stood there, paralyzed by the weight of the words Claire had just spoken. I wanted to scream, to cry, to make her feel what I was feeling. But there was something about this moment, something in the stillness, that kept me rooted to the spot. I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know what the right thing was anymore. Finally, I broke the silence, my voice low and steady. "I don't want to be a part of this, Claire. Not anymore. You've made your choice. And now, it's my turn to make mine." I turned to leave, but as I reached for the door, Claire's voice stopped me. "Tom, please don't go. Please, just listen to me. I'm sorry. I never meant for it to turn out like this. I didn't want to hurt you." I didn't turn around. I didn't need to hear it. I couldn't. I had to leave. I had to get out of this house before I completely lost my mind. I walked out the door, the cold night air hitting me like a slap in the face. My mind was spinning. Everything that I thought I knew, everything I had believed in, was gone. It wasn't just about her and Jason anymore. It was about me. It was about the life I had built, the person I had been, and the realization that I had been living a lie for so long. As I drove away, I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. I just needed to get away, to clear my head, to figure out what to do next. I had no plan, no destination. I didn't even know what I was running from, or maybe I was just running towards something, some kind of answer I hadn't found yet. I kept driving, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. The city lights blurred as I sped down the road, the hum of the engine the only sound filling the car. My mind was numb, my emotions all over the place. The night seemed endless, stretching on for miles, and I felt like I was trapped in a never-ending loop of confusion and heartache. But I couldn't stop. Not yet. Because somewhere inside, I knew this wasn't over. This was just the beginning of the chaos. I didn't know where I was going. The streets passed by in a blur of headlights and streetlights, the hum of my car's engine filling the silence. But even with the noise, my mind was deafeningly loud. My thoughts were spinning, faster than I could keep up. How had everything gone so wrong? How had I ended up in this moment, standing outside my own life, watching it collapse before me? The pain was sharp, but it was the betrayal that hit hardest. I thought I knew Claire, I thought I knew us, but now, everything felt like it was falling apart, like it was never real. I didn't want to face the truth, not yet. Not while I was still trying to piece together the shattered fragments of what was supposed to be my life. I kept thinking about Claire's words, her apology, but it was Jason's face that kept haunting me, the smugness in his eyes, the way he stood there like he belonged, like he had a right to be there. I wanted to scream, to shout, to break something, anything, but I didn't. Instead, I kept driving, my hands tight on the steering wheel, my eyes focused on the road ahead, but not really seeing it. I needed to escape. I needed to get as far away from that house, from Claire, from everything that had been so wrong. But even as I tried to distance myself physically, the emotional weight of what had happened was impossible to shake. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out without thinking. It was Claire. She had sent me a message. "Tom, please, I need to talk. I can't just leave things like this. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I stared at the screen for a long time, feeling a mixture of anger and sadness well up inside me. I didn't want to respond. I didn't want to hear anything she had to say. But something inside of me, something I hated, urged me to reply. I was a fool. A part of me still wanted to believe in her, in us. But I knew that part of me was dying. I put the phone down, not answering, as I pushed the accelerator a little harder. The city gave way to empty highways, the night stretching out before me, an endless road that felt both like freedom and isolation. I didn't stop for hours, just driving through the darkness, trying to outrun the pain, the anger, the disappointment. Somewhere along the way, I ended up at the edge of town, in a place I didn't recognize. The road was narrow, lined with trees that blocked the view of anything beyond. It felt like the right place to pull over. I parked the car and sat there in the stillness, the engine ticking softly as it cooled. The quiet was overwhelming. I was completely alone, far away from everything I had known. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt the weight of the truth sink in. I had been living in a fantasy, clinging to something that wasn't real. Claire's betrayal, Jason's presence in our lives, it was all a lie. But what hurt the most was the realization that I had been a fool for believing it. I opened the door and stepped out of the car, feeling the cool night air hit my face. The stars were bright above, but they didn't provide any comfort. The world seemed so vast, so indifferent to everything that had just shattered inside me. I stood there for what felt like hours, trying to make sense of it all, but the more I thought, the more the questions piled up. How had I missed the signs? Had she been seeing Jason behind my back all this time, or was it something that had just recently rekindled? Why didn't she trust me enough to be honest? I felt like I was drowning in a sea of unanswered questions, with no one to throw me a lifeline. The sound of my phone buzzing again snapped me out of my thoughts. This time, it was a call. It was Claire. I didn't want to answer. I wanted to block her out, forget about everything. But something kept me rooted to the spot, something that told me I wasn't done yet, that I needed to hear what she had to say. With a deep breath, I answered the call. "Tom, please." Her voice was shaky, full of regret. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I've hurt you, but I need you to understand that I never wanted to do this to you. I never wanted to betray you." I closed my eyes, feeling the sting of her words cut deep. It was too late for apologies, too late for explanations. My mind was made up, but my heart wasn't ready to let go. "You don't get it, Claire," I said, my voice low, steady. "You've already done it. There's no turning back from this. You lied to me. You kept secrets from me. You've hurt me in ways that I can't even explain. And now, you want me to just forgive you, to understand? How do you expect me to do that?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear Claire breathing, could almost feel the weight of her shame through the phone. "I didn't know how to fix it, Tom," she said quietly. "I was scared. I was scared that if I told you the truth, I would lose you forever. I was scared of what you'd think of me." I let out a bitter laugh. "So, you kept it all a secret instead? You thought lying was the best option?" "I know it was wrong," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't think it would go this far. I never wanted to hurt you." The anger that had been building up inside me started to bubble over. "Then why didn't you tell me, Claire? Why didn't you just be honest? You could have come to me. We could have worked through this together. But instead, you chose to keep lying, to hide everything from me." I felt my chest tighten as the weight of everything hit me again. The betrayal was overwhelming. "I know," she said softly, "and I regret it every single day. But I need you to know that I love you. I really do. I just made a terrible mistake." Love. It was the word that used to mean everything between us, but now it felt hollow, empty. I didn't know what was real anymore. "I don't know what to believe anymore, Claire," I said, my voice cracking. "I don't know if I can believe you. How am I supposed to move past this?" She didn't respond right away, but when she did, her voice was quiet, almost pleading. "Please, Tom, please don't walk away from me. We can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes." But I knew deep down that I couldn't stay, that no matter how much she begged or apologized, nothing could erase what had been done. There was no going back. I had to let go. "I don't think we can fix this, Claire," I said, my voice steady now, even though it felt like my heart was breaking. "I don't think there's anything left to save." I ended the call, staring at the screen, not knowing what to do next. The world felt like it had been turned upside down, and I had no idea how to find my way back. But one thing was certain. This was just the beginning. And the road ahead would be long, dark, and filled with more pain than I was ready to face. The night seemed to stretch on endlessly. I sat in my car, parked in that remote part of town, the weight of everything pressing down on me. My mind was still racing. Claire's words echoed in my ears, a dull thud with each passing second. "I love you. I didn't mean to hurt you." I had heard those words before, countless times, from people who promised they wouldn't let me down, from friends, family, even Claire herself. But the difference this time was that I couldn't ignore the feeling that the words didn't carry any meaning anymore. No matter how much she apologized, how many times she begged for forgiveness, the truth had already been revealed. I was standing on the other side of something I couldn't undo. The pain wasn't just the betrayal, it was the realization that I had been blind. I had trusted Claire with everything, and she had shattered that trust in ways I never imagined. I kept trying to go back in my head, to find the moments where things had changed, to pinpoint when I should have known. But there were no obvious signs, no glaring red flags that screamed, "Something is wrong." It had all been so subtle, so insidious, that it caught me completely off guard, and that hurt more than anything. I glanced at my phone. I had ignored all of Claire's calls after I hung up on her. I didn't want to hear it anymore. The apologies, the pleading, it was all meaningless now. I needed to process what had just happened, but I had no idea where to begin. How do you process a betrayal like this? How do you pick up the pieces of your life when you realize that everything you thought you knew was built on lies? I knew I needed to go back, to face her, to make sure I wasn't just running away from the truth. But even the thought of going back felt like a punch to the gut. I couldn't do it, not yet. I needed time, distance to breathe. My thoughts were interrupted by another buzz, another message from Claire. This time, it wasn't just a text, it was a voice message. "Tom, please. I need you to understand. I never meant for this to happen. Jason and we didn't plan any of this. It just happened, I swear. I know I've messed up, I know I've hurt you, but I need you to know that you mean everything to me. I never stopped loving you. I was just confused. Please don't let this be the end. We can fix this, I swear we can. I don't want to lose you." I didn't know how to respond. The sincerity in her voice was almost convincing, but the reality of the situation was too stark. I had trusted her, I had believed her, and yet here we were, on opposite sides of this unbridgeable chasm. No amount of pleading could erase what had happened, what had been revealed. I clicked off the message and stared out the window at the dark sky, my thoughts more scattered than ever. What now? Was there even a way forward for us? The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the idea that I couldn't trust her anymore. How could I rebuild a relationship when the foundation had been completely eroded? Could I even look at her the same way again? I didn't have the answers, but there was one thing I was sure of. I couldn't stay in that place of limbo forever. I had to make a choice, a decision, one way or another. I couldn't go back to that house and pretend everything was fine. But I also couldn't just walk away without confronting the truth, without getting the closure I so desperately needed. I started the car, the engine humming to life as I turned onto the road, heading back toward the city. The drive felt longer than it had before. Each mile seemed to stretch into eternity. I wasn't sure what I was going to do when I got home. I wasn't sure what I wanted from Claire, but the one thing that was becoming clearer with each passing second was that something had to change. I couldn't just let it end like this. I couldn't walk away from the relationship we had built together without understanding why. I needed to know what had gone wrong, even if I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. When I pulled up in front of the house, it was quiet, the only sound being the faint rustling of leaves in the wind. I sat in the car for a few moments, staring at the front door, feeling the weight of what I was about to face. I wasn't ready. I didn't want to hear any more apologies. I didn't want any more lies. But I knew that this was the only way to get the truth. I walked up the path, each step feeling heavier than the last. When I reached the door, I hesitated. My hand hovered over the doorknob, but before I could turn it, the door opened from the inside. Claire stood there, her eyes swollen from crying, her face pale. She looked at me with a mixture of relief and anxiety, as if she didn't know what to expect from me anymore. "Tom," she whispered, her voice cracking, "I wasn't sure if you'd come back." I didn't answer her right away. Instead, I walked past her, into the house, not waiting for an invitation. I needed space. I needed room to think, to process, but I knew I couldn't just leave things hanging in the air. She closed the door softly behind us, standing at the threshold as I made my way into the living room. I didn't look at her right away. I couldn't. The anger I had been feeling earlier was now replaced with something colder, detachment. I couldn't allow myself to feel the way I had before, to feel the same love for her, not after everything she had done. "Tell me everything, Claire," I said, finally turning to face her. "No more lies, no more half-truths. I need to know what really happened, and I need to hear it from you." For a moment she just stood there, silent, her eyes filled with guilt and sorrow, but finally she nodded and sat down. She motioned for me to sit, and for the first time in a long time, I did. "I never meant for it to get this far, Tom," Claire began, her voice small and shaky. "Jason and we had something. It wasn't planned. It wasn't something I wanted to happen, but it did. It was a mistake, and I know that now. But when it happened, I couldn't stop it. And I didn't know how to tell you. I thought if I just kept it hidden, everything would be okay. I thought I could keep both of you in my life without destroying everything, but I was wrong. I was selfish, and I hurt you in ways I can't even begin to understand. But I need you to know that I never stopped loving you, Tom." Her words were like a tidal wave, crashing into me with all the force of the ocean. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I could forgive her. But I wasn't sure I had a choice anymore. "How long, Claire?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "How long have you been seeing him?" She looked down at her hands, avoiding my gaze. "A few months," she whispered. "It started small and I thought I could control it, but then it got out of hand." A few months. I tried to process the magnitude of what that meant. For a few months, I had been living with someone who was keeping a secret this big. For a few months, I had been blind to the truth, too trusting, too naive. "And Jason?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "What happens with him now?" Claire hesitated, clearly torn. And then slowly, she looked up at me. "I don't know, but I need to figure out how to fix this, if you'll let me." I didn't know if I could let her. I didn't know if I could ever go back to what we had. But I had to ask myself one thing. Could I ever truly move on from this? Could I let go of the past, of the trust I once had, and rebuild something from the ruins? The silence between us was thick, and in that moment, I realized that everything had changed. Nothing would ever be the same again. The air in the living room was thick, filled with the weight of everything unsaid. Claire sat across from me, her eyes red from crying, her hands wringing together in her lap. I could see the vulnerability in her, the hurt that came from knowing what she had done, but it didn't make it any easier for me to process. For months I had trusted her. I had loved her deeply, and now I was staring at the wreckage of everything we had built. Her confession hung in the air like a storm cloud that refused to break. "A few months," she had said, and those words kept echoing in my head. A few months of lies, a few months of betrayal, a few months of her being with Jason, while I lived in the illusion that everything was fine. It made me sick to my stomach. I looked at her, but it wasn't the woman I had married. It wasn't the woman I had shared so many years with. This person, this stranger, was sitting across from me, someone I didn't recognize anymore. I had to fight the urge to walk away. I didn't want to hear any more of her excuses. But part of me, the part that still loved her, even through all the hurt, needed to understand. I needed to know how we had gotten here, how this had happened. "You say you never stopped loving me, Claire," I said, my voice breaking. "But how could you love me while doing this? How could you look at me, day after day, and still choose to be with him? How does that make any sense?" Her face crumpled as she wiped her eyes. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know how it happened. It just did. And once it did, I couldn't undo it. I was too far in, and I was too scared to tell you. I was scared of losing you, Tom." I didn't know how to respond. Her words were a mix of guilt and regret, but they weren't enough. They couldn't take back the damage. They couldn't undo the choices she had made, the lies she had told. "You were scared?" I asked, my voice incredulous. "Scared of losing me? You should have thought about that before you lied to me, before you kept this secret from me. I didn't deserve this, Claire." I stood up, pacing around the living room, feeling trapped in the space between us. She was still there, sitting in the same spot, looking at me with eyes full of apologies. But I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her, not anymore. "I don't know what to say to you," I admitted. "I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to move forward when everything feels like a lie. Everything we've built, every moment we've shared, it's all been tainted by this one thing. And I don't know if I can ever get past it. The silence between us grew heavier, each word like a stone sinking into the depths of my chest. I could feel the weight of the decision I was about to make. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach, that familiar ache that comes from the realization that things will never be the same again. I didn't want to be here anymore. I didn't want to keep fighting for something that seemed so broken, so beyond repair. But a part of me, no matter how much it hurt, was still clinging to the idea of us. Claire stood up, taking a step toward me. "I'll do whatever it takes, Tom," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll work through this. I'll prove to you that I can be the woman you deserve. I'll do anything." Her words, though spoken with desperation, didn't hit me the way they once would have. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, but the betrayal was too much. I couldn't forget what she had done. I couldn't forget how she had made me feel like a fool for trusting her. And no matter how many times she apologized, no matter how much she begged for forgiveness, the truth was that I couldn't see her the same way anymore. "I don't know if I can believe you anymore," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again. You've broken something between us, Claire, and I'm not sure if I can fix it." Her face paled, and I saw the tears begin to well up again. She reached out toward me, but I stepped back, instinctively pulling away. "I never meant for this to happen," she repeated, her voice breaking. "I love you, Tom. I swear. I never meant to hurt you." I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "That's the problem, Claire. You didn't mean for this to happen, but it did. And now I'm left picking up the pieces of something I didn't even break." I turned away, not wanting to look at her anymore, not wanting to see the guilt on her face, the pain in her eyes. I needed space, time to think. I needed to figure out what came next, but the truth was that I wasn't sure. Everything was so blurred now. My mind was a mess of conflicting emotions, and I didn't know which way to go. "I need some time," I said, my voice firm, though my heart was breaking. "I can't do this right now, Claire. I need to be alone." She didn't argue. She didn't try to stop me. She just nodded, the sadness in her eyes more than I could bear. I walked out of the living room, out the front door, and into the cold night. The world outside was quiet, too quiet, and the stars above felt too far away, too disconnected from what I was feeling. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go from here. I walked down the street aimlessly, my mind spinning. My thoughts were a whirlwind of confusion, pain, and anger, and I had no idea how to put the pieces together. I passed by the places that once felt familiar, our favorite coffee shop, the park where we had spent so many afternoons. But everything felt distant now, like they belonged to someone else. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing myself, that the man I had been before Claire and I had met was slipping away piece by piece, and I wasn't sure I could get him back. It was then that I realized, no matter how much I tried to deny it, the person I had been, the life I had lived, was gone. What I had with Claire was gone, and no matter how much we wanted to fix it, we couldn't turn back time. The path ahead was uncertain. The future was a fog I couldn't see through. And as I walked further into the night, I didn't know what was waiting for me on the other side. But one thing was clear, nothing would ever be the same again. Days passed in a blur after that night. I barely slept, barely ate, consumed by the storm of emotions that churned inside me. I'd walked away from Claire, I'd walked away from our home, and in many ways, I had walked away from the person I had once been. But sometimes, in the midst of the wreckage, you find yourself standing on the edge of a new beginning, even if you can't see it yet. I spent time with friends, people who didn't know the details of what had happened, but who knew the man I used to be, the man I needed to be again. I went for long walks, something I hadn't done in years, just to clear my head. I needed to reconnect with the parts of myself that had been lost, to rebuild the foundation that had been broken. Slowly, I began to realize that while the past had shaped me, it didn't define me. And the future, it wasn't written yet. Then one evening, as I walked through the park, I got a text from Claire. It was simple, short, but the words were enough. "I'm so sorry. I've been doing a lot of thinking. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want you to know that I'm here whenever you're ready." I stared at the message for a long time. It had been a week since we'd last spoken, a week since I had walked out. But this time, I didn't feel the rush of anger or betrayal. I just felt tired of holding on to the hurt, tired of letting it consume me. I'd been angry, rightfully so, but I'd been holding on to the pain for so long that I was starting to realize I had to let go. Not for her, but for me. The next day I met Claire at the park. I found her sitting on a bench, her hands folded tightly in her lap, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. She looked up as I approached, her eyes filled with uncertainty. And for a moment, I saw the woman I had once loved in a way I hadn't seen in days. "Tom," she said softly, standing up. "I didn't expect you to come. I didn't expect anything, really." I sat beside her on the bench, taking a deep breath. "I didn't know if I would either," I admitted, "but I think we need to talk." We didn't say anything for a long time after that. We just sat there, side by side, in a kind of silence that felt right. The past week had been a storm, but now it was calm. I realized how much I had missed the simplicity of being with her, just the two of us, without all the complications. Finally, Claire spoke, her voice trembling. "I know I hurt you. I know I betrayed your trust in ways that are unforgivable, and I'm sorry. I've been thinking about everything, and I don't know if I can ever fix what I did, but I want you to know that I've changed. I've learned so much about myself in this time, and I realize now that I didn't just hurt you. I hurt me too." I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in a long while, I saw the woman I had fallen in love with. The woman who was capable of making mistakes, yes, but who was also capable of growing, of changing. The person who had always been my partner in this journey of life, no matter how rocky the road had been. "I'm not going to lie," I said quietly. "What you did hurt me more than anything I could ever imagine. But I can see that you've been hurting too, and I don't want to carry that anger around anymore. It's just eating me up inside." Claire nodded, tears welling in her eyes again. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want you to know that I'm here, Tom, and I'm not going anywhere. If you're willing to give me a chance, I'll do whatever it takes to prove that I can be the person you deserve." There was a long pause, and in that moment, I realized that forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past or pretending it didn't hurt. It was about choosing to move forward, to let go of the anger, and to open myself up to the possibility of healing. "I don't know if I can ever fully forget what happened," I said, my voice steady. "But I want to try. I want to give us a chance. Not for the past, but for the future, for what we can still build." Claire's face broke into a smile, a tear slipping down her cheek as she took my hand. "I'll spend every day making sure you don't regret this. I love you, Tom. I've always loved you." And in that moment, I realized that love wasn't a destination, but a journey. It was messy and complicated and imperfect, but it was also beautiful. I wasn't sure what the future held, or how long it would take to rebuild everything, but I knew one thing for certain. We weren't done yet. As I stood up, helping Claire to her feet, I could feel the weight lifting from my shoulders. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be fast. But we had time, we had each other, and that was enough. Together, we walked into the future, ready to face whatever came next, side by side.